There's a specific kind of exhaustion that comes after being around people, even people you love. Your body feels depleted in a way sleep won't immediately fix. Your mind feels scattered, like someone shuffled all your internal files and left them in the wrong order. You need to be alone. Not because something went wrong. Not because the interaction was bad, but because something in you is demanding it with an urgency that feels almost physical. You finally close the door behind you after a dinner with friends. Good people, meaningful conversation. And yet the moment you're alone, your nervous system exhales. The relief is so profound it's almost alarming. Why do I need this so badly when everyone else seemed energized by the same evening? This pattern repeats across contexts. After work gatherings where you performed competence and congeniality. After family dinners where love mixed with a strange sense of being drained by proximity itself. After friendly hangouts where nothing went wrong but everything required effort. The common thread isn't the quality of interaction. It's that interaction itself costs you something it doesn't seem to cost others. And then comes the cultural verdict. You should get out more. You're isolating. It's not healthy to be alone so much. The words arrive with concern, sometimes with judgment, always with the assumption that your solitude is a problem requiring correction. The message is clear. Something is wrong with you. This creates an internal fracture. Maybe they're right. Maybe I am avoiding life. Maybe this need for aloneness is weakness, social failure, the beginning of a slow withdrawal from the world. You start monitoring yourself for pathology, wondering if your nature is actually dysfunction. But what if this isn't pathology at all? What if this is orientation? Carl Jung identified introversion as one of two fundamental psychological types, not a disorder, not a phase, but a constitutional way of being with its own coherence and gifts. Not about shyness or fear, not about lacking social skill, about where your psychic energy naturally flows and what that movement demands of you. Jung wrote, "The introvert's attitude is an abstracting one. At bottom, he is always intent on withdrawing libido from the object, as though he had to prevent the object from gaining power over him. This isn't weakness. This is design." This video will show you the hidden architecture of the loner's psychology, why you need what you need, what's operating beneath your awareness, and how to honor this orientation without becoming trapped by it. We'll move from the surface experience you recognize to the unconscious mechanisms you don't yet see, and finally to what integration actually looks like for someone built this way. That exhaustion you feel, the depletion that comes from social engagement, has a specific psychological mechanism. Jung's concept of libido explains why your energy moves differently than others. Jung used the term libido to describe psychic energy, not sexual energy specifically, but the general life force that animates consciousness. Where this energy flows determines your fundamental psychological orientation. And for introverts, that flow moves in a direction most people don't understand. Jung defined introversion as a turning inwards of the libido, whereby a negative relation of subject to object is expressed. Read that carefully. A negative relation to the object, not hatred of the object, not fear of it, but a withdrawal of investment from it. Your interest doesn't move toward the external thing, the person, the event, the stimulus, but recedes toward the subject. Toward you. Toward the internal response the external thing generates. This is not about social skill. You can be socially competent, even charming, and still be constitutionally introverted. The question is, what holds primary psychological value? For extroverts, the object itself, the interaction, the external engagement, energizes and satisfies. For introverts, the object matters primarily for the internal response it activates. Two people attend the same party. The extrovert is energized by the interaction itself, the exchange, the atmosphere, the collective energy. The introvert processes the internal reactions to that interaction, impressions, thoughts, feelings that arise in response but remain interior. Jung defended this orientation against the cultural bias of his era, writing, "The subjective factor claims the whole value of a world-determining power, which can never, under any circumstances, be excluded from our calculations. The subject, your inner experience, is just as real, just as significant as the external world." The introvert knows this instinctively. The world often denies it. This creates different survival strategies. Jung described extraversion as operating through increased fertility, accompanied by a relatively small degree of defensive power. Spend energy, expand, engage widely. Introversion, by contrast, works through individual equipment of manifold means of self-protection, coupled with a relatively insignificant fertility. Conserve energy, build impregnable positions, engage selectively, not better or worse. Different. This explains why social interaction depletes you in ways it doesn't deplete extroverts. You're not failing at socializing. You're processing everything through elaborate internal channels that require significant energy expenditure. The extrovert's energy flows outward and returns through external engagement. Yours flows inward and requires internal processing before anything can be released back out. Jung wrote that the introvert seeks to defend himself against external claims, to conserve himself from any expenditure of energy directly related to the object, thus consolidating for himself the most secure and impregnable position. This is your energetic economy. You're not hoarding resources out of fear. You're managing a system that operates on different principles than the extroverted model the culture treats as default. The exhaustion you feel after social engagement isn't weakness. It's the cost of running a high processing system through low bandwidth external demands. Your interior world requires fuel. Social performance drains that fuel faster than solitude replenishes it. This energetic difference Jung described isn't just psychological theory. It has biological substrates that neuroscience has now confirmed. Understanding these roots changes how you relate to your own nature. Your brain operates differently, not deficiently, differently. Marty Olson Laney's research revealed that introverts and extroverts rely on distinct neurotransmitter systems. Extroverts have more dopamine receptors, but less sensitivity to dopamine. They need higher levels of stimulation to feel rewarded, energized, alive. You operate primarily through acetylcholine, the neurotransmitter associated with calm, focused attention, and deep thinking. This pathway is longer. It requires more processing stops, more internal checkpoints before anything reaches conscious articulation. This explains why you need time to formulate responses, why quick-fire conversation can feel jarring, why your best thinking happens in silence rather than in dialogue. You're not slow, you're thorough. The architecture of your nervous system demands it. Hans Eysenck identified another biological difference: baseline cortical arousal. Introverts have higher resting levels of activation in the brain's arousal system. You're already closer to optimal stimulation internally. External stimulation doesn't lift you toward optimal, it pushes you past it. Too much, too fast. The noise level that energizes an extrovert overwhelms your system not because you're fragile, but because you're differently calibrated. Research confirms this across sensory domains. Extroverts tolerate significantly higher levels of noise and pain. Introverts detect stimuli at lower intensity thresholds. You're not oversensitive. You're tuned to a different frequency, registering signals others miss entirely. This has evolutionary logic. Thomas Boyce and Bruce Ellis proposed the differential susceptibility theory, the orchid versus dandelion hypothesis. Approximately 15 to 20% of any population consists of orchid children, highly sensitive individuals who flourish dramatically in supportive environments but deteriorate in poor ones. Dandelions show relative stability across conditions. Orchids provide something dandelions cannot: depth of processing, attentiveness to subtle danger, capacity for sustained vigilance. Your sensitivity exists because it had survival value. In ancestral groups, having some members tuned to nuance, registering threats others overlooked, processing information more thoroughly, noticing patterns in the environment protected the collective. You are not a deviation from the norm, you are part of the design. Neuroimaging confirms structural differences. Introverts show more activity in the frontal lobes and anterior thalamus, regions associated with internal processing, memory retrieval, problem solving. Your brain preferentially engages the parasympathetic nervous system. Rest, digest, restore. Extroverts activate the sympathetic system. Fight, flight, mobilize. Your need for solitude is not psychological weakness, it is biological requirement. The system that allows you to process deeply, think thoroughly, and perceive subtly demands recovery time that extroverted systems don't require. But understanding the biology while validating doesn't complete the picture, because knowing why you need solitude doesn't explain what happens when you need it too much, when sanctuary becomes fortress, when protection becomes prison. This is where Jung's concept of the shadow becomes essential. Jung observed a fundamental law of the psyche: compensation. If you take an introvert, he wrote, his unconscious has an extroverted quality, because all the introverted qualities are played out in his consciousness and the extroverted are left in the unconscious. What you reject doesn't disappear. It goes underground. You've cultivated an interior world: depth, contemplation, self-sufficiency. You've learned to protect that world by withdrawing psychic energy from external objects, from people, from the demands of collective engagement. This is your strength, but every psychological strength casts a shadow, and yours takes a specific form: the extroverted shadow. Everything you've pushed away to maintain your solitary coherence operates autonomously in the unconscious, primitive and unintegrated. This manifests in ways you might not recognize as shadow: the sudden social binging after weeks of isolation, compulsively saying yes to every invitation, overextending yourself in ways that feel unlike you, then collapsing back into withdrawal. The hours lost to compulsive media consumption, scrolling feeds, binge-watching series, pseudo-connection that substitutes for but never satisfies the genuine relational need. The impulsive attachment to objects or people that shocks your carefully maintained detachment, buying things you don't need, forming intense dependencies that seem to contradict your self-sufficient identity, or the crude, emotional outbursts that erupt when you've been alone too long, irritability that feels disproportionate, sudden anger at minor intrusions, sentimentality that embarrasses you, crying at commercials, feeling overwhelmed by small gestures of affection. These aren't personality quirks, they're compensatory eruptions. The extroverted functions you've repressed are breaking through in primitive, uncontrolled forms. Marie-Louise von Franz identified this pattern across introverted types. The inferior function remains largely unconscious and behaves in primitive, spontaneously arbitrary, intense, undisciplined, and archaic ways. It operates in the fashion of the opposite attitude. Your conscious introversion is refined, controlled, selective. Your unconscious extroversion is crude, compulsive, indiscriminate. Beneath these eruptions lies what Jung called fear of the object. The external world, people, demands, unpredictable social situations feels intrusive, overwhelming, threatening to the carefully maintained interior fortress. You guard your private space territorially, not just as preference but as survival mechanism. Visitors feel like invasions. Unexpected phone calls trigger low-grade panic. The thought of prolonged social engagement generates a specific kind of dread. This reveals the critical question: Is your solitude sanctuary or fortress? Sanctuary restores. Fortress defends. One serves growth, the other serves avoidance. Legitimate energetic limits exist. You've seen the biological evidence. But those limits can harden into rigid avoidance that has nothing to do with temperament and everything to do with fear. The line between "I need solitude to function" and "I'm terrified of what engagement might demand of me" blurs easily. Shadow dynamics ensure you can't always tell which is operating. This shadow dynamic, this fear operating beneath legitimate need, creates a specific psychological crisis that compounds the problem. When the world demands extraversion and your nature resists it, you develop what Jung called a persona, the social mask you wear to function in collective life. You've learned to perform a version of yourself that fits. Sociable enough, engaged enough, present enough to avoid questions about why you're so quiet, so withdrawn, so unavailable. This is your persona, the social mask Jung identified as necessary for functioning in collective life. But in extrovert-biased cultures, the persona demanded of introverts requires betrayal of constitutional nature. You're encouraged, sometimes pressured, sometimes shamed, into adopting extroverted behaviors that contradict your energetic design. You learn to initiate conversations you don't want to have, accept invitations you'd rather decline, present enthusiasm you don't feel. The mask works. People stop worrying about you. You appear normal, functional, integrated, and you feel chronically exhausted. Jung warned explicitly, whenever such a falsification of type takes place as a result of external influence, the individual becomes neurotic later, and a cure can successfully be sought only in a development of that attitude which corresponds with the individual's natural way. Forcing yourself into extroverted performance doesn't make you extroverted. It makes you sick. Object relations theorists Harry Guntrip and Melanie Klein identified this pattern as the false self, appearing socially available and engaged while the true self remains hidden, protected, untouched. These are the secret schizoids who maintain perfectly functioning personas while experiencing inner emptiness, disconnection, or chronic depletion. You smile at the party, you contribute to the meeting, you show up for the dinner, and something essential in you is nowhere present. The persona serves survival, but complete identification with it is pathological. Many natural loners develop what Jung called a thin or fragile persona, minimal social armoring, because sustained performance costs too much. Every interaction requires conscious effort. Every social situation demands energy you don't have to spare. The mask that comes naturally to extroverts exhausts you after 20 minutes. Withdrawal often follows not preference but collapse. The overstrained persona simply cannot hold any longer. The recovery time you need afterward isn't optional self-care. It's restoration of a depleted system. The developmental task is differentiation, recognizing that some persona is inevitable. You cannot function in the world without some capacity for social adaptation, but complete identification with a false self destroys what makes you coherent. The challenge is finding the line between necessary adaptation and self-betrayal. Developing sufficient social capacity to function without sacrificing the introverted orientation that allows you to access depth, meaning, and your own psychological center. This persona crisis, the exhaustion of maintaining social masks, connects to something more fundamental operating in every loner's relational life. A structural conflict between what you consciously want and what unconsciously terrifies you. You need connection, and you experience it as threatening. This is the double bind at the core of the loner's psychology. You crave understanding, genuine intimacy, being truly known by another human being. And the moment someone gets close enough to provide it, something in you recoils. Not consciously, not as choice, but as reflex, a pulling away that feels like self-preservation. Jung paired introversion with logos, discriminating, separating consciousness, the principle of differentiation and boundary. For introverted men particularly, the anima, the unconscious feminine principle representing relatedness and connection, is often extroverted, bound to objects and people in primitive, unintegrated ways. This creates structural conflict. Your conscious orientation moves toward autonomy, clarity, self-sufficiency. Your unconscious orientation binds you to others through possessive attachment, emotional dependency, or raw need you don't want to acknowledge. The result is what Guntrip called the in and out program. You seek intense connection, pouring yourself into relationship, opening in ways that feel vulnerable and real. Then you need distance. Not slight distance. Complete withdrawal to recollect the self that feels scattered by proximity. You retreat, restore your boundaries, remember who you are without another person's presence rearranging your interior space. Then the cycle repeats. Partners and friends experience this as confusing rejection. You promised intimacy, then vanished. You were present, then absent. They don't understand that you're not being inconsistent. You're managing a structural conflict between autonomy and merger that operates whether you acknowledge it or not. The pattern isn't fickleness, it's architecture. Beneath this lies what Ronald Fairbairn identified as the schizoid core fear. It is love, rather than hatred, that is the destructive force within. Schizoid individuals, and this includes many natural loners on a spectrum from healthy to pathological, believe their love will consume or destroy. That attachment means loss of self. That opening to another person means being dissolved, engulfed, erased as individual. This operates unconsciously. You don't think, "I fear my love will destroy." You simply feel the pull to retreat when closeness intensifies. You construct rationales, they're too needy, the relationship is moving too fast, you need space for your work. And beneath every rationalization, the terror that intimacy equals annihilation. Jung emphasized that introverts must consciously develop capacity for connection. The anima or animus, the unconscious contrasexual figure, serves as bridge between conscious ego and the relatedness principle. But when these figures remain unconscious, they operate through projection and possession. You fall into relationships where the other person carries your capacity to relate. You become dependent in ways that contradict your self-sufficient identity. Then you flee that dependency, confirming the belief that connection threatens autonomy. Rick Hansen identified 4 relational modes: integrated, comfortable with both closeness and agency; engulfed, highly connected but not free to act; isolated, strong personal desires but weak connections; adrift, dissociated from both others and self. Natural loners often oscillate between isolated and engulfed, never achieving integration. The recognition that intimacy need not undermine autonomy, and autonomy need not prevent intimacy. That these capacities support rather than contradict each other. But recognizing this intellectually, understanding the pattern, doesn't resolve it. Because breaking this cycle requires distinguishing between different kinds of aloneness, and most loners oscillate between sanctuary and prison without recognizing which they're inhabiting. The question isn't whether you're alone, it's what your aloneness is serving. Solitude is conscious choice. Chosen withdrawal that restores, replenishes, deepens your capacity to engage when engagement matters. You feel energized afterward, clearer, more yourself. You maintain relationships, perhaps few, but genuine. You can return to connection when it's called for. This is solitude, rest for a high processing system, sanctuary for depth work the world doesn't accommodate. Isolation is fear-driven, unconscious avoidance disguised as preference. You withdraw, not because you've chosen restoration, but because engagement has become unbearable, too threatening, too depleting, too likely to expose vulnerability you can't afford. You feel depleted by aloneness, but cannot seem to emerge from it. Relationships atrophy. The thought of reconnecting generates anxiety that feels insurmountable. This is isolation, progressive narrowing, the world shrinking under pressure you won't name. Most loners oscillate between both states and cannot tell which is operating. Clinical markers distinguish them. Solitude energizes or brings neutral calm. Isolation drains. Solitude maintains capacity for connection even when not actively connecting. Isolation erodes that capacity. Reaching out feels increasingly impossible the longer you wait. Solitude involves low arousal positive affect, peace, focus, contentment. Isolation involves anxiety, depression, or the particular loneliness of being unreachable. But the most reliable marker is autonomy. Virgilio Thomas's research identified dispositional autonomy as the critical variable. People who experience positive outcomes from solitude share one trait: the sense that their solitude is chosen rather than imposed. Not as much a problem of introverted individuals, but more a problem of autonomy. You can be alone for identical hours doing identical activities, and the internal experience, chosen versus compelled, determines whether it serves or harms you. Jung was explicit about solitude's role in individuation. The patient must be alone if he is to find out what it is that supports him when he can no longer support himself. Only this experience can give him an indestructible foundation. Necessary aloneness, where you encounter what Jung called the self, the psychological center that transcends and includes ego. This is not isolation. This is descent into interior depths that collective life prevents. But he equally insisted, the test of the tower is the marketplace. Withdrawal that doesn't return to engagement with others is not individuation. It's flight. The hermit who descends the mountain brings something back. The isolated person never descends at all. The question you must ask yourself repeatedly: is my current aloneness expanding symbolic life and responsibility, or shrinking my world under the sway of fear? Does it serve creativity, depth, restoration, or does it protect me from necessary encounters with shadow, obligation, and the relational demands I've been avoiding? Knowing the difference matters, because only one leads to integration. And integration requires practical pathways, concrete structures that honor your energetic reality while preventing the defensive withdrawal that masquerades as temperament. Integration for natural loners doesn't mean becoming extroverted. It means designing a life structure that honors your energetic reality while preventing defensive withdrawal. Start with sanctuary, dedicated physical space for solitude, not hiding, but restoration. A room, a chair, a stretch of time that belongs to interior work and nothing else. This isn't luxury. It's infrastructure for a nervous system that requires low-stimulation environments to process the high-stimulation demands of collective life. Without sanctuary, you're operating in permanent deficit. Establish rhythms, daily solitude time, non-negotiable. Recovery periods after social events, not hours, sometimes days. Periodic do-nothing days where no performance is required of you. Dongning Ren's research found that deviation from optimal solitude levels, too much or too little, correlates with poor mental health. The rhythm matters more than the absolute amount. Your system needs predictability, knowing restoration is coming, not wondering if you'll ever be alone again. Set boundaries without disappearing. This is the differentiation task in practice. Declining invitations respectfully while maintaining connection. I can't make it tonight, but let's schedule something next week. The difference between healthy boundary and avoidant withdrawal lies in whether you maintain the relational thread, saying no to the event but yes to the relationship, protecting your energy without severing the bond.
Invest in depth over breadth. One meaningful conversation with a close friend provides more psychological nourishment than navigating a room full of acquaintances. Quality one-on-one time where genuine exchange happens. This matches your processing style. Large gatherings deplete you not just through stimulation, but through the shallow mode of engagement they require. Depth work happens in dyads and triads, rarely in groups. Develop explicit communication. Partners and friends cannot read your needs. The assumption that they should, that love means intuiting what you require, creates resentment on both sides. Explicit negotiation prevents this. I need alone time tonight. Can we connect tomorrow? This isn't rejection, it's transparency, teaching others how to love you in ways you can actually receive. Consider vocation carefully, work that aligns with your temperament, independent tasks, deep focus, minimal performance demands, one-on-one interactions rather than group facilitation. Contributes to sustainable functioning more than any amount of self-care can compensate for. 40 hours weekly in extrovert-optimized environments will exhaust you no matter how much you rest. The hermit traditions across cultures suggest that solitary work can serve collective good. Your depth processing, creative output, intellectual contribution, quiet service, these are forms of participation that don't require constant social performance.
But sustainable connection, while necessary, isn't sufficient for wholeness. Because these practical structures, sanctuary, rhythms, boundaries, manage symptoms without addressing the underlying psychological split. Integration ultimately means something more difficult than managing your energy. It means confronting the structure that keeps you isolated even when you're trying to connect. Here's the paradox at the center of the loner's path. Becoming fully yourself requires developing precisely what feels most foreign to your nature. For you, that means developing relational capacity without betraying your introversion. Not becoming extroverted, that's neither possible nor desirable, but expanding to include connection as integrated capacity rather than threat to be managed. This is what Jung meant by individuation. Not perfection, but wholeness. A self that includes rather than eliminates what it has rejected. The shadow work is specific. Approaching the extroverted shadow with curiosity rather than conquest. Allowing the primitive relational functions, the crude eros, the compulsive object-seeking, the unrefined emotional responses to inform your conscious life without dominating it. Small experiments with spontaneity, letting yourself be expressive when the impulse arises instead of monitoring and controlling every external gesture. Engaging with the object world, people, events, physical reality, without the protective filtering that keeps you perpetually at one remove. Marie-Louise von France emphasized that the inferior function can never be fully developed, but must be allowed to function in its own primitive way. You're not trying to master extraversion, you're developing relationship with it. Letting it speak without demanding it conform to your conscious standards of refinement. This means tolerating clumsiness, imperfection, the feeling of not knowing what you're doing when you reach toward connection. The vision of wholeness for natural loners looks like this: an expanded self that honors introversion while including relational capacity. Freedom to engage when life calls without losing your center. Capacity for both chosen solitude and selective connection. The ability to be alone without defending against relatedness, and to relate without sacrificing the interior depth that makes you coherent. Jung offered practical guidance. If you always do the next thing that needs to be done, you will go most safely and sure-footedly along the path prescribed by your unconscious. For loners, this means noticing when the next thing that needs to be done is reaching out, responding to the invitation you'd normally decline, having the conversation you'd normally avoid, not forcing extraversion as lifestyle, but responding to genuine calls toward connection without reflexive withdrawal. Integration means living the tension between autonomy and intimacy, not resolving it, living it, trusting that the inward path, when followed honestly, eventually turns outward. That withdrawal in service of depth ultimately returns to engagement. That your solitude, when it's genuine sanctuary rather than defended fortress, generates something the collective needs, even if it can never quite name what you've brought back. This is not easy work, and it's essential to acknowledge why. Jung called individuation a heroic and often tragic task, the most difficult of all. For natural loners, it requires befriending what you've spent your life rejecting, living the tension between autonomy and connection without collapsing into either extreme, trusting that the inward path, when followed with integrity, ultimately returns you to the world, changed, carrying something the collective needs even when it cannot name what you've brought back. This is not about fixing yourself. You are not broken. Your need for solitude is not excessive. Your sensitivity to stimulation is not weakness. Your requirement for depth over breadth, for few genuine connections rather than many shallow ones, for interior work that happens in silence and emerges slowly. These are not failures of adaptation. They are design features of a psychological orientation that has existed across cultures and throughout history. Because it serves functions, extroverted engagement cannot. Your gifts are real: capacity for depth, contemplative clarity, sustained focus, creative incubation, the ability to perceive what others miss because you're processing at levels they don't access. The hermit traditions across spiritual lineages understood this. Withdrawal in service of depth is vocation, not escape. Your solitude, when it's genuine sanctuary rather than defended fortress, generates insight, art, thought, presence that collective life requires, but cannot produce through its own mechanisms. The task is honoring this orientation while remaining available to life's full spectrum. Not abandoning introversion for forced extraversion, but including relational capacity, allowing the primitive shadow functions to inform and expand you. Building sustainable connection that doesn't betray your energetic reality. This means living with uncertainty about which impulse is healthy solitude and which is defended isolation. Repeatedly asking whether your withdrawal serves growth or protects against necessary encounters. Tolerating the discomfort of not always knowing, of making mistakes, of sometimes choosing solitude when connection was needed, and sometimes forcing connection when solitude was calling. The paradox remains. Your withdrawal may serve collective depth in ways extroverted engagement cannot, but only if it eventually returns. Only if the tower opens to the marketplace, even briefly, even imperfectly. Thank you for exploring this with me. If this resonated, I invite you to like and subscribe. This work deepens when we're not alone in it. Share this with someone who might recognize themselves here, and leave a comment with your reflections. Where do you find yourself in this territory? What's your experience of solitude versus isolation? Thank you for doing this consciousness work. See you in the next exploration.